Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of The Stash Report from The Stash Project. Today is the 14th of October, 2016, and while this was originally going to be a little bit of a light show, and not so much in a like, ooh, lasers, but in a content-wise, we did get a few things come out this week, and then Revell has come through and announced their first quarter of 2017, so we have that flyer to look at. So we actually have some new kit announcements, which prior to yesterday afternoon, yeah, that didn't exist. So there were some rumors and speculation coming out about people finding new item numbers at Stevens International and Tower Hobbies, and then they put out a flyer to confirm what was being reported in those rumors. You know, if you ever want to know what Revell is going to be doing ahead of time, you simply need to figure out about 2.5 months prior to the start of a new quarter, which this is right now, because it'll be, you know, the middle of October, so it's 2.5 months until 2017 at this point. The year has just flown by entirely. And, you know, so we're getting the first quarter. So sometime around middle of January, you should probably start looking for the second quarter. You just need to go to like Tower Hobbies, plasticmodels.com, plastic-models.com, which is Tower's retail website. Tower owned by Hobbico, the owners of Revell. So this is sort of like, you know, their own vendor thing. Most people know about Tower Hobbies. You can just search through Revell's kits, and you'll start seeing stuff that has no picture, and then it'll have a really late release date. So right now, if you go through Tower Hobbies, all the kits we're going to talk about here in a second are, you know, showing late January, late February, late March, first quarter of 2017. There's no pictures for them because they're just new additions, but you have to sort of like, you know, literally search through every listing to find them. So what are those new first quarter things? As we usually do, I'll be looking over here. You guys probably won't see it, but if you see me glance off screen, I'm not being rude, but there should be a graphic in front of my face. So here's the flyer from Revell. You see there's a couple of military things on here. You get a reissue of that old personnel half-track. That's on its select subjects program, which means it'll be a limited release. And there is that F-15C Eagle, which it's a 148 scale. Don't know enough about planes to really tell you much about that. But the cars, which is what we're here to address, you see up there at top right, the 1966 Chevrolet Suburban. They're saying new tool. I'm interested to see exactly how much new tool there is with this, in the sense of how much of it is a carryover from the fleet side pickups, at least in terms of excuse me, in terms of engine, drivetrain, chassis itself. Obviously, it'll have a completely new interior and a completely new body. You know, just because a pickup truck obviously doesn't have a rear seating area and a rear cargo area. Well, it has a rear cargo area, but not an enclosed one. This is going to be a two-wheel drive Suburban. There really weren't that many four-wheel drive Suburbans made back then. Maybe sometime in the future we'll see a four-wheel drive. You know that Revell never tool something up unless they have plans to do 2 or 3 of them. So again, that remains to be seen as far as the 2 or 3 of them, whether or not this is a new body and a new interior on the pickup truck's chassis, because the fleet side and the step side seem to be shorter wheelbases, at least in my mind, than the Suburban is, at least in real life. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. If it's a brand new tool, then expect to see, I don't know, a California Wheels version of it at some point in time. Kind of disappointing that it's not four-wheel drive, because it would be a nice companion piece to the Bronco that will be coming out later in October. Next up, we got the Foose Ford F-100 1956 Ford pickup truck. That is a all-new toolkit. It's 3D scan from his actual vehicle. Really don't know too much about it other than, you know, look at what the real truck is, and that'll be what it is. It's not going to be a 2-in-1 or anything else like that. Then you have the reissue of the old monogram 1978 Mazda RX-7 tool. Yes, it is an older tool in the sense of being a late 70s, early 80s kit. I'm not sure what year the 78 came out in. I think it was actually 79 or 80. It's been reissued, I think, once or twice in the last 30 years. I believe 90s might have been the last time. This is going to be a 2-in-1, so it'll have all of the Cafe Racer parts. That was a separate kit at one point in time. Plus, obviously, you'll be able to build it factory stock. It's great to have back just simply because the first-gen RX-7s are a odd little lot. This is the only full detail first-gen RX-7 in existence. Tamiya did one, but it's 1/20th scale. Aoshima is one that they constantly throw out as being like the 1976 Daytona 24 Hours car. Or I suppose it's 1978 Daytona car. That is the old IME tool, and it is curbside, and it is like most IME tools, pretty awful. And then the Fujimi one that just got reissued as a street car, but is also still based on that same 78 Daytona 24 Hours car, at least the subject matter, is an old Nito tooling, which is a curbside motorized, and it's probably even worse than the IMA in the sense of the motorization, because it still has like the battery compartment built into the chassis and all that sort of stuff. So if you want a first gen RX-7, this is really the way to get it. You can obviously modify the kit from there, and being 1/24 scale, a lot of those parts that you want to use to modify it in the sense of wheels and tires and things like that will actually be the right scale, unlike a lot of the 1/25 scale import stuff that Revell had done in the past, like the NSX and the Miata and all of the tuner series cars. Moving down to the bottom here, you got the 51 Angelina or Anglia coming back out again. It too is going to be in a select subject program, meaning it's a limited one-run kind of kit release. It should just be a reissue of the venerable kit. I mean, it's been out I don't know how many times, and I don't know in how many variations. If you have one, you have one. But if you have one and you want another one, now you can. And then last but not least over there is that 1969 Corvette Yenko 2-in-1. Now, Yenko was obviously a dealer out here near where I live. It's probably about 45 minutes away or so, because there's no real direct road there. It's only probably about 20 miles, but you know how rural it gets, and especially if you're rural in Appalachia, there's no roads to it that don't involve a lot of this sort of thing. So you got to take a couple of freeways and make a great big L to get to Canonsburg from where I live. Yenko, obviously, known for its Novas and its Camaros and its Corvairs and stuff like that, was actually the Corvette dealer of choice here in the Pittsburgh area. They had the Pittsburgh Corvette Performance Center or something like that. The Yenko kits, the Yenko cars that they sold were just sold like straight through the actual Yenko Chevrolet dealership. They didn't really make customized, if you will, Corvettes. The one that's being replicated that you saw there on the flyer that's yellow is a best options, if you will, kind of Corvette. It's a actual survivor car based out here. Actually, on the other side of Pittsburgh, about the equidistant away is about 20 miles outside of Pittsburgh to the east, out towards Latrobe, which people who don't know the Pittsburgh area real well may recognize the name because of Arnold Palmer's passing here recently. Latrobe got a lot of press and airtime about the fact that Arnold Palmer was from Latrobe originally. It's original survivor's car. It's had an engine restoration, but the rest of the car is all original, and that seems to be legitimately what they're copying here, because the real car is yellow as well. This kit itself will just be the 1969 Corvette Coupe that was originally released in the mid to late 90s in molded in orange. This may be a kit that will hit people that have been building at least for the last 25, 30 years. Because you'll remember the box art originally was wrong. The original box art for the original release of the kit said it was a 429 Corvette, when it was just a 427. They then later fixed that box art, making the 429 ones collectible. And then it's been reissued once or twice. It was turned into a Baldwin Motion car and then a race car. I think it's Owens Corning was the sponsor on that. And then it has been released in the California Wheels kit as well, which had a combination of the original factory stock parts and the Baldwin Motion parts with a set of donk wheels that are in those California Wheels kits. So this will be that California Wheels reissue, basically, probably without the California wheels, or maybe it will have the California wheels, but obviously has to have the factory stock wheels, which I do not believe were actually in that California Wheels kit. I don't have one of the California Wheels kits to actually be able to tell you what the contents are of it. So, if you have one and you know what wheels came with it other than the California wheels, leave a comment in the comment section below to let other people know, because that's really one of the things I can't tell you for sure what it had inside. I had one of the original 429 Corvette kits that I had as a kid, and like when I would have been, I don't know, somewhere in my mid-teens, I want to say, and I snapped the front suspension in half trying to get the wheels on. You may recall the old sort of snap press fit wheels that a lot of monogram Revell kits had back then. And the kit just sort of languished, and it never went anywhere. And I think I either sold it to somebody or traded it off, or I may have actually even thrown it out because the front suspension had been snapped in half. And I never got one of the California wheels reissued, so I probably am thinking I might get that because I kind of like the '69 Corvette in the first place. The Yenko conversion of this kit is just going to be a new set of decals, and if you remember the flyer there's a luggage rack that's on the real car. The real car has a luggage rack of that Survivor car we were talking about. And I don't remember if the original kit had that luggage rack in it or not, because that was obviously a Corvette option to have that luggage rack over the gas tank, which is kind of an odd place for it in the first place. So that is what it is as far as the Revell first core releases. Suburban interests me, the Corvette interests me, and I definitely want to get one of the RX-7s because it is the first generation RX-7. So that'll take us to kit releases this week. There's one domestic kit release, and that is round 2. That is a reissue of the Larry Fullerton Trojan Horse Funny Car. I think it's supposed to be a '75 Mustang. That is going to get, of course, the Retro Deluxe box treatment, as you see here. It's got new decals. It's got a new front clip that's been retooled to have the headlights and grille be sort of set into the front clip rather than just being a flat piece of plastic like the original kit was. So there's some new tooling involved. Also, the front wheels have been, the front tires have been retooled, and the rear tires are now a pad printed affair. And that's it for the domestic side, because the Revell stuff probably won't be out till next week. And that is the only round 2 automotive release for this month. So the Bronco and the Beretta, which will the Pro Street Beretta that Revell are doing, will be the last of your domestic kit releases. Now, moving overseas to Japan, we're going to touch on this real quick because if you were waiting for it out of Japan and you did not purchase it here in the United States or in Europe or in Canada or anywhere else that it was released earlier, because this is Tamiya's new technique or new tactic to try to thwart the sale of these kits from Japan to the United States and other places. In Japan, the release of the Honda Acura NSX is out. Like we said, we bought this kit here domestically because the price of it at the guy who sells locally was what it would be for the kit plus shipping and handling. So it was a situation of why wait for it when the price was exactly the same. It is full detail kit. The only part about there's a few things about this kit that I don't particularly care for. We'll address it more in the actual kit review of this, because we're going to do a kit review of this coming up here in the next sometime in the rest of this month. Obviously, making the Meng kit review was a multi-hour affair, both in the terms of actually filming it and then the time spent editing it. I appreciate all the comments, the positive comments about the video quality itself and everything else about it. But since it's such a time-intensive thing, I have to try to find time to do both the recording and the editing. The editing I can sort of do with my kids up and about, because it's not that it's not that all-encompassing where I can't focus on it. But recording it, it requires about 35-40 minutes of quiet time, and that's kind of hard to find with kids. So we move over to let me see here. Fujimi's got one reissue one release so far this month, and this is actually supposed to come out last month. It is the Toyota ESTIMA Exclusive Zeus. It is a VIP version. The ESTIMA, by the way, is the Toyota Previa here in the United States. Now, of course, you do get a right-hand drive, Japanese-only kind of setup to the interior on this. But if you wanted to make a VIP Previa, and you knew somebody could make you some decals to make Previa, and you felt like hacking the dashboard in half and making it a left-hand drive. Other than that, it is just one of those Japanese things, because I don't know what else to say about this kit. It's curbside. It's basic. It's everything you'd expect out of a Fujimi kit in terms of parts and build and everything else. I actually have an ESTIMA, not this one. I just have a factory stock one. It's not a bad kit. Got decent chassis detail, okay interior. The body's all nice and Previa, if you will. But this one adds a rear spoiler and some what look like walled wheels, and ground effects and all that sort of thing. So, it is what it is. That takes us over to Hasegawa. Hasegawa has a couple of reissues coming out this month. I believe there's one more kit coming. I'd have to go look at the. I didn't bring the notebook upstairs. You guys will notice we're not downstairs. We're upstairs because my wife got a new computer as well. We've been geeking out our inner World of Warcraft this week. The first reissue is another EK6 Civic. This one in the Castrol livery. This is just a straight reissue of the Jack's kit, which was a straight reissue of this kit, however you will look at it. I'm not sure what order these kits came out in real life in terms of which one came out first, which one came out second, and all that sort of thing. There were something like 5 or 6 different versions of this EK6 Civic. Ones that have these 5-spoke wheels that you see in the picture. The other ones have the racing wheels that are more of a mini light style thing. I think they're actually I can't think of who the actual wheels are by, but this is just, it is what it is. You two-tone the white and the green, and then all of the red and the hood and the roof. The hood and the roof are, decals of their own. You don't have to paint anything there. You have to paint the front bumper, the back bumper, and that sort of diagonal green that's on the side of the car. But then the red is a decal, so at least you don't have to try to stripe that off and paint that. And that brings us over to another reissue of the Hasegawa 962C Porsche Group C car. This designed for the Japanese prototype sports car series. This is a Truss and G-Ready sponsored car. This car won a few races in the years that it ran, so it was a successful race car. This is basically just a reissue of the 962Cs that they've done a number of in the last few months, and just with another different livery to it. That's all. Those disc wheels you see on the back wheels there are in every single 962C, so you don't need to necessarily buy this kit to get them. You can buy any of the other ones. There are a number, of course, of Studio 27 decal reissues for this. They're going to be doing another one coming up here in late October, as well as specialized detail sets for the disc wheels and specialized decal sets for the mesh wheels. It's so much detail you can't stand up straight. And that'll take us over to Aoshima. Aoshima is your headquarters for crappy old kit reissues this quarter, or this month. It's just the nature of what they do, but reissue of the Best Car Vintage, helping my daughter with something. Best Car Vintage Nissan Gloria 4-door hardtop 280e Brougham. If you want a 1980s Gloria, this is probably, there are only two, Fujimi made one and Aoshima made one, and they're both equally kind of then you have a reissue of the S30 Fairlady Z Aero Custom. This, of course, is an old Nissan Fairlady kit that they updated in 2012 with this Aero Custom package, and it has sold like proverbial pancakes ever since. It seems like it gets reissued about every 4 months or so. But it is motorized and it is all that stuff. The reissue of this thing, the Volkswagen Beetle 1303S Cabriolet. This is an old IMA kit. While it is one of the only representations of a late Beetle, it was supposed to be a 1975, it is such a craptastic kit that it is not worth your time or effort. This has the actual battery box engraved into the chassis, like we talked about earlier, that other IMA kit. And that makes the interior like this deep because it rides on top, sort of the way some of those Hasegawa American cars that they did. People don't realize Hasegawa did a series of 1960s American cars. The one that you always see around is the 66 Buick Wildcat. Those seem to be produced in a large mass quantity that every single vendor at every single show has at least one of somewhere. And they're, not bad proportion-wise, but the interior is Johan deep because it rides a motorized generic chassis for all of those American cars, and that makes the chassis not right. And, of course, they were wildly not successful here based on the fact that, of course, they didn't have it in them. So, I'm just saying, spare yourself the agony of this IMA Cabriolet because it's really, awful. It's a shame because it's the only late 70s Beetle kit out there, and then the coupe that came out sometime this year, I want to say, was the only version of the Super Beetle that's around, but it's also equally craptastic. They're just really awful kits. I can't even begin to explain to you how awful they are. I just always enjoy when somebody I know gets one of them, and they're like, you said it was bad, but wow, this is awful. Yeah, it's awful. They need to bury these old IMA tools. They're just not really worth the reissue agony. I don't know. All right, so continuing with the best car vintage reissues this week, the reissue of the Toyota Celica 1600 GT. The Hasegawa kit is infinitely better, especially after they made the version that has those factory stock wheels that you see on this. I want to say this is actually a picture of a built model kit on this box, just the way the wheels and the tires look. But if it is or if it's real, who cares? It's irrelevant. Motorized, batterized, everythingized. Best car vintage kits. And then the only reason this doesn't get a complete and total it gets a 98% is because this is the only version of the liftback Celica there is. So if you want to build a liftback Celica, you're kind of stuck. This is where the Nissan Gloria, Nissan Cedric kits come in, or some other things where it's motorized. And or another good example of this will be four-door, the 1960s Skyline, the one that everyone, the Tamiya kit of, and everybody's done one, but there's a four-door version by Fujimi and Aoshima. Both of them are crappy, so you got to sort of pick your poison as to which one's less crappy. The four-door version of the, later 73 Skyline, that, of course, the GTRs, the Fujimi one is better than the Aoshima one. But there's four-door versions of them from both companies, and again, you're sort of like, which one of these motorized junk kits is the least crappy if I want a four-door 1970s Skyline? This is that pick your poison sort of thing. If you want a liftback Celica, you can only get it this way. There is no other liftback Celica kit out there. For some reason, Hasegawa has never made a liftback for their Celica tool, which sort of seems like a no-brainer, but maybe they don't think it would sell because this one exists, but obviously they made the other 1600 GT, I don't know. Sometimes you get to wonder about these sort of things. But, oh well. Alright guys, that's where we're at for this month, or this week I should say. This is obviously a mercifully much shorter video than the last one because it doesn't cover 3 weeks worth of stuff. Again, I will take a time out of my busy schedule here at the very end of this video to once again remind you that the Foos kit is a brand new tool kit. I have seen, ever since this came out, and there's been talk about it for the last 2 or 3 days now, I have seen nothing but the same old nonsense about how they're just putting Foos's wheels and a Foos's name and a set of donk wheels on the old, everything opens, 1960s 56 Ford kit. That is simply not true. It is going to be a completely new tool kit. They went out to Foos's shop and they 3D scanned the real thing. We covered that in the status report like a year and a half, 2 years ago. There were pictures of them doing it. Foos put them on his Facebook page. You'd really have to go dig through Facebook to find that at this point because obviously it was so long ago. But they legitimately went out and 3D scanned the real truck because the real truck, in addition to a custom frame and chassis and a custom engine that is a modern engine, not an old one, the real car is sectioned, it's pancaked, it's chopped, it's this, that, and it's Frenched. It's everything you could do customized, but still leave it look just like a 56 Ford. And there's like not a single body panel that they didn't fiddle with in some way, shape, or form. So there's no way for them to reissue the old kit with new tires and wheels and maybe a new engine. If they did that, that could potentially just be the end of Revell as you know it. Because I think that would be tantamount to fraud at that point. You tell everybody it's a new tool kit. You and Foos post things about it being scanned 3D, and it's new kit. The description from Revell that goes along with that flyer says new tool. You say all that stuff, and then you poop out the old kit with new wheels. That's fraud at that point. So they just can't do that, guys. I don't care how many things you've heard or who told you what. It's not a reissue of the old kit with new wheels. It is a brand new tool kit. And when the Eldorado, which is the other one that they did, the Cadillac Custom, that's the other Foos glue kit that's going to be coming out probably towards the end of 2017. Obviously, that's a new tool kit because what would you base that off of? Revell doesn't even have a kit of it. So it'll be interesting to see how well these two Foos kits sell. Revell, for its own financial safety, has to do kits that there are multiple variants of. That's why I said it'll be interesting to see if the Suburban is in fact a retool of the pickup truck kit in the sense of just putting a new body and new interior on that, or if it's a legitimately completely new tool that requires them to make several Suburbans in the future as far as additional variants, because they need the kits to make at least usually 3 variants in order to be successful. This Foos pickup truck there's so much of it that's not stock. Making a stock pickup truck out of that kit at some point in the future probably isn't any more viable than them retooling completely or redoing completely the original 56 Ford stock pickup truck, because there's no stock parts to this pickup truck other than maybe the grill and the, I don't know, the steering wheel or something silly like that. And the Eldorado, obviously, you really can't make it into anything else because it's a customized Cadillac. Trying to make it into a factory stock Cadillac out of that would require almost all of it to be new tooling anyway. So Foos must be paying for part of this tooling, I would assume, because you're doing a one-run type of deal with his name attached to it. I mean, there could be a point in time in the future where the licensing is drawn out that, you know, Foos doesn't want to license it anymore, and they can reissue it as like the FUDs Ford or something like that, you know, something with no licensing, the way that so many of their other reissues. Anybody who remembers the 1980s and the early 1990s when all of the show rods were getting reissued with different names and different, you know, tags to them and little parts added, so they weren't Tom Daniels kits anymore. They weren't. I'm trying to think of who else. There's another name floating around out there. The Ed Roth stuff. The Ed Roth stuff wasn't licensed for a little period there, you know, and they were reissued as slightly different names. You know, that could be done in the future, but there's no. The point I'm trying to get to here, I feel like that peg leg sailor on Family Guy. The point of the story, the general gist is, there's only one way you can make this kit, and so somebody has to be paying the freight for this, or you know, the revenue sharing is you know, wildly different than it normally would be, or something, because I just don't see where one kit tools are viable. You know who makes one kit tools that don't have any secondary, you know, variations to them? Tamiya does. And look what Tamiya kits cost. So, you know, they charge that much, because, you know, the Honda NSX, unless they make a Type R of it eventually, that Honda NSX, there's nothing else that's ever going to come out of that. It's always just going to be a Honda NSX. So that's why it's a $52 model kit, because you got to charge that much. That's why Bell kits cost what they do. You know, there's no secondary tooling of the rally kits. I don't know. Be interesting. So that's what we have for this week, guys. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys on